Hello, everyone. This is Professor Alan Barrell, and I'm so pleased and honored to be able to share some of my life with you and to talk about stages and experiences in an entrepreneurial career. First of all, though, let me say hello from Cambridge, my home. I'm sitting in my home city, a wonderful place. There is the River Cam, and on the right-hand side, King's College. So I have been very privileged to live in this place and work here for a long time. And when I talk to you, as I will, about my life's journey, experiences, I really would like you to consider your life's journey. Our vision and aspirations, our own vision and aspirations, are very important, but they may be difficult to realize. And there may be moments of special challenge in your life as well as mine, and what I call calls to adventure. And this man, a management trainer, gave us some very interesting thoughts when he said, we may have to give up the life we have planned to find and take up the life that is waiting for us. And I give you that message now because my life has not been just planned from day one and followed to some kind of algorithm. It has been varied. And we can use my life journey as an example of other great lives as well to stimulate your own thoughts about your future. But let's start at the beginning. I started life like everybody else. I probably looked a bit like this. This is my grandson, actually, when he was only 1 day old. And everyone begins like this, however famous or successful they may eventually become. We all start something like this. And all great stories, at least, start with people. So my life journey has taken me around the world in 3 phases. I was visionary when I was young. I hope I'm still visionary now. I had a vision to be a professional in biomedicine. I wanted to be a doctor, really. And then in a second phase, and I'll tell you about the first phase in a moment, I had a call to adventure and a new motivation. And that led me from medicine to business. And I had progress in international business and experience towards entrepreneurship. And I had a new call to adventure later in life and a conversion to an entrepreneurial life and academic engagement. And as you examine with me this personal story, think about these things: creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and the importance of research and innovation, and how these can lead to new business startups. I was born in 1940 in London. Unfortunately, by the time I was 5 years old, lots of London and other cities in Europe looked like this. So I didn't have a very calm childhood, but I survived the bombings of the Second World War, as did my family. And I had an uneventful childhood in a poor but happy family, and my progress was fairly normal. I went to primary school, grammar school. I had great aspirations to study at a higher level and go to university and to medical school. My aspirations, as you will see, were not realized fully due to a need of the family for me to work and earn money. Instead, I spent 6 years of full-time work and training in clinical laboratory bioscience, which I thought was the next best thing to medicine. But it did mean that as well as working every day and sometimes weekends, I had to spend 4 evenings a week at classes. But I was working in the shadow of heroes and heroines of medical science that had long inspired me, and I'm going to mention some of them in my story. Eventually, I graduated. So as to my heroes, this is a great one, and we can learn a lot from just a few moments thinking about these people. Louis Pasteur, the discoverer of bacteria, a monumental step for medical science and the treatment of infection. Now look at these words, which inspired me and have inspired me for the whole of my life. Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. If your mind is prepared for something unexpected, you will benefit. And I was fascinated by the laboratory. And here's another great microbiologist, Sir Alexander Fleming. And he discovered penicillin in 1927. But you know, it wasn't until 1942 that it was available to save lives. Turning science into medicines takes a long time. Now remember what Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. Penicillin story is a very great example. Now, here is Fleming in his lab. You can see all the little plates on which he grew bacteria. And a mistake led to the discovery of penicillin because Fleming went home one weekend and left a window open beside his culture plates. And when he came back on the Monday morning, some of the colonies of bacteria had been killed. His mind was prepared, and he thought deeply about it, and he discovered what killed them. And it was a mold blowing in the window, a penicillium mold. So that's a great example of how mistakes can lead to fantastic things if your mind is prepared. This is another of my heroes. And here's a man who was an innovator and he was an improviser. He didn't have a lot of resources, but he made do with what he had. And people who improvise often do have to overcome very difficult difficulties. Now, Willem Kolff was an entrepreneur. He didn't think of himself as being an entrepreneur, but he was one. He was living in Nazi-occupied Holland in the war when I was a boy. But he created from old washing machines and car parts something that really he had dreamed about, a way of saving the lives of people whose kidneys had stopped working. Because from the washing machine and car parts, he made the first artificial kidney machine. And here it is in 1942 in use, with a patient's blood being passed through it for purification and back again. And when I thought and dreamed of medicine, I also had in mind this wonderful lady, Maria Salomia Skłodowska-Curie, born in Poland, but living after becoming a lady in France with her husband. She saved so many lives. She had to fight and overcome not only the scourge of cancer, but resistance to a woman in a man's world. And she was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize, and she actually won two and became the first woman professor at the University of Paris. She died of radiation poisoning. Now, when I got involved in the laboratory in the hospital that employed me, I specialized and graduated in hematology, not bacteriology, the study of blood and blood diseases. Now, this is not me, but it's what I looked like when I wore a white coat and worked in the lab. And my job then entailed everything from collecting blood from the patient to doing all the blood tests and recognizing the different blood cells. Some of you will have seen under a microscope normal red blood cells, the cells, millions and millions of which transport oxygen around our bodies and marrow. And I also learned to recognize all the variants of white blood cells which fight infections and can kill bugs that invade us. There are some of them pictured there. Don't worry about the title. I was very fulfilled and I was very happy in my work and learning every day. It was wonderful. But, aha, suddenly there came a call to adventure. And it was not a professional call, but a very personal one. And this is a reminder that human beings have hearts as well as heads. Because a young lady appeared on the scene, a very beautiful young lady. And I got to know this lady very well, and we became very close friends and began to think of married and family life. But my financial situation was very, very unfavorable to getting married. The pressures were severe. An ambition stirred within me, and a new world was revealed. A call to action. So I undertook a transition from life in the lab with no knowledge of business or entrepreneurship. I didn't even know the word entrepreneur in those days. And I decided to cross the threshold after that call to adventure to a new world and exchange my white coat for a suit, a tie, and salesman's briefcase. And there I am marching with optimism into a new world, full of enthusiasm for the future. What I did learn and what impressed me working 6 years in a general hospital pathology laboratory, and I think it's good to reflect on what we have learned. I learned a lot about people in many situations. I learned about the impacts of sickness and the great value of those motivated to be healthcare professionals. I learned from Pasteur and others that lessons in one field can be applied elsewhere. Think of his great quote. Remember it? Chance favors the prepared mind. I learned about the importance of attention to detail and professionalism, trust and honesty. I learned about responsibility and accountability. I saw the value of thinking out of the box, like Willem Kolff. And I had my first glimmer about business because while I worked in the laboratory, salesmen called trying to sell me medical products. So I knew that there were such people in the world as salesmen, and I was about to become one. I had also to work with controlled costs, so I learned about expense controls and budgeting. Now, I learned a lot in those few years in the hospital, which I carried with me into the future. So that's the end of part one and answering a call to adventure. And here I am on my way to be the best salesman I thought in the world. And next time I talk to you, I will talk about learning how to sell, how I adjusted to corporate life, how I began to understand the global economy and traveling the world, how I learned to live with competition, both inside the company and outside it. And I learned about marketing. I'd never heard the word. I'd been in a laboratory working on science. And I began to understand business, finance, and I began to understand entrepreneurship. And I also was forced by circumstances to start thinking about life balance because the business world was quite demanding and aggressive, and I had to deal with the pressure. So I'm looking forward to our next meeting. I'll see you there. And in the meantime, I hope you have great days ahead of you and also some relaxation. And I'm going to say goodbye for now.